that policy and politics are at work in Washington, but that's not what was going on. What was going on was trying in the midst of what frankly was the fog of war to figure out what had happened.
You famously said whether it was a protest or a group of guys walking out and deciding to kill some Americans.
What difference at this point does it make? That's right.
Does it make a difference?
In the moment, it did not. In the moment, what we had to be focused on was saving American lives.
Does it make a difference now? Do you want to change that? Do you want to?
No, I don't.
Whoa, doubling down. Hillary Clinton. And joining us now, as promised, is our friend Bill Kristol, founder and editor of the Weekly Standard. Hello, sir.
Hey, Steve. How are you?
All right. Are you surprised that Hillary doubled down on that and didn't want to change it at all?
That's been her tendency throughout her political career, you know, to stick with, it's always been safer to kind of try to defend whatever position she's got. She finally flipped on Iraq, I guess maybe 6 years too late for her to help her in a Democratic nomination. That actually is a flip that I think could end up backfiring too, because what does she know now that she didn't know then that leads her not to have supported the war in Iraq? I mean, that would be the question. And of course now what's happening there, which is terrible, is the result of our withdrawal. So, but leaving that aside, I think in general she's sort of decided to try to defend her record as Secretary of State, defend everything she said, never apologize. I think that's kind of her motto. We'll see how that works. I'm a little doubtful that this whole book tour is going to be very helpful to her prospects, honestly.
Well, personally, I'm surprised. I know you're in D.C. I thought you might have flown back to head down to Union Square here in New York and get your copy autographed.
I mean, my colleague Daniel Halper is actually reading the book. He's going to write something on it for us. I've just read the excerpts like everyone has, and read the transcripts of a couple of interviews. He says it is so boring. I mean, it is just so carefully written, to not offend anyone and to sort of whitewash, to put a nice gloss over everything that happened.
Well, she needs a new ghostwriter then.
Yeah, no, I'm sure the ghostwriter could have. I mean, there would be an interesting book to be written about being Secretary of State, whether you're a good one or a bad one. You deal with a lot of interesting choices and a lot of interesting personalities. I get the impression you don't get much of a sense of any of those in the book, and it won't be much of a resource for historians. I think that we can take for granted. I don't think it's going to help her presidential campaign, though. I mean, I think at the end of the day, there's going to be enough criticism of what she said and didn't say. Noah Pollack wrote something for us on how she misrepresented what she did with respect to Israel in 2009. She pretends now she was opposed to a policy that she seems to have championed at the time. There are plenty of other things she's got in the book or has said in the interviews promoting the book that I think were problematic for her. I think she will be worse off in the polls 6 weeks from now after this massive book tour, massive publicity, than she was starting off.
What about the broke comment that her and Bill were broke when they left the White House? Didn't they have a pending book advance for millions and millions and millions of dollars?
I think the $8 million deal was already signed by her, actually, so that was money really virtually in the bank. Clinton, her husband, was going to sign a $15 million deal, which everyone knew was coming. So that is a good example. I mean, I guess she just thinks we're all so credulous, and she's such a celebrity and such a figure that she can just go around saying these things and in the most, I mean, it's so artificial. I mean, I'm going to connect with middle America by saying, well, we've had struggles, too, except her struggle was to buy 2 huge houses with an $8 million book deal, maybe that hadn't, the check was a month away. But I'm sure it was hard for her to get credit from banks.
Yeah, she talked about mortgages.
If you're Hillary and Bill Clinton and you go to the bank, I'm sure they don't accept your, the collateral of something coming in a month that's already been announced in the newspapers. I mean, it's so ludicrous, but it does make you wonder what she's thinking almost. I mean, it's so ham-handed and tin-eared, I guess, to combine metaphors, that it reminds one that she was not a good candidate. I mean, for all the glamour of Hillary Clinton, and she's inevitable, and she's this and she's that, it's not clear that she's really a good politician.
And you wrote a great piece at the Weekly Standard talking about the possibility of a Hillary hangover from all this exposure or overexposure, as the case may be.
I mean, she's been around a long time, and history does suggest that we like to nominate presidential candidates who have some experience, but who are often pretty fresh faces. Obama, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, even Reagan. Reagan was first elected governor of California in '66. He gets elected president in 1980, 14 years later. Hillary Clinton has been on the national scene at least since '92, which will be 24 years in 2016, and obviously was the wife of the governor for a decade before that. So I just think people are underestimating how tired people will get of the American public will get of Hillary, and how much. If I were a Democrat and a liberal, I would think, really, this is like what we've been reduced to. We have the wife of the former president from 20 years ago. Can't we have someone who's serving in the Senate, or a governor who's in touch with current challenges and current problems? Do we really want someone who is so closely associated with the Obama administration's foreign policy? I really do think if Elizabeth Warren challenged Hillary after the initial, gasping and everyone telling her she couldn't possibly have a chance, and it would take a while to move the polls, because people instinctively now, Democrats are saying, oh, I'm for Hillary, but it wouldn't take that long, I think. And I do think she is more vulnerable than people believe.
Interesting. Well, time certainly will tell. Let's shift over to the Bergdahl situation. I want you to listen to John Kerry. He was asked as to whether or not it's now more likely that these 5 detainees who were released will go back into terror, will be a threat to the United States, et cetera. And here's how he responded to that question.
Propaganda is propaganda, and they'll say whatever they want to stir the waters. So people should not be lured in by their propaganda, number one. Number two, we are ending our combat role. Our combat role in Afghanistan is over. We're going to have very few, people in that kind of position on occasion. But I honestly, I just think that's a lot of baloney, to be truthful with you. And to whatever degree it may be true, they will wind up putting themselves at the mercy of those people who are very effective, who are there, who will deal with those matters.
Okay, so and this is in contrast, according to reports today, of what the senators and congressmen who are being told, behind closed doors about the deal, about what the true assessment is from the White House and from the government when it comes to these detainees. He calls it baloney, but it seems that the administration is telling a different story.
Well, think about this for a minute, Steve. Why were these guys still detained? I mean, the Obama administration has been trying to release everyone they could from Gitmo who was sort of releasable, right, who they could plausibly say is not going back in the fight, is lower level, et cetera, right? It's not like these guys were still there. What does that tell you? That tells you that even the Obama administration couldn't justify releasing these guys. They're senior commanders. They're obviously going to go back to the fight and be in touch with those going back to the fight. They've already inspired, unfortunately, and given a real shot in the arm to people who are in the fight. So that part is ridiculous and contradicted by assessments from within the Obama administration over the last 5 years, and contradicted, I think, by what the senators and congressmen have been told in the last couple of days. Secondly, I find his comment about, our combat role is winding down. Well, that's very nice, but 2 Americans were killed last week from hostile fire in combat, and that's not counting, obviously, the friendly fire disaster from today, I think it was yesterday or this morning. But so there is still combat going on. Of course, Kerry knows that when he says, if they go back in the fight, our guys are tough, they'll take them out. Well, I thought the combat role was ending. You can't have it both ways, right? But there's a kind of braggadocio there that's really not befitting a Secretary of State. We have guys over there fighting. Either we're helping them stay safe or we're not. You can't have it both ways. It's no problem. These guys won't do anything, and if they try to do something, our guys will whack them. Well, is there a war going on or not? And it's one thing, leaving aside the damage they'll do to people in Afghanistan, even if we're out of there. We're not out of there. So I really thought Kerry's comments were, as is often typical for him, I've got to say, sort of inappropriate almost, and unseemly, really, for an American secretary. Fine, if he wants to defend the deal, just say it was a tough decision we made. We had to give up people we know are bad guys. He just thought we had to get the soldier, even though he's not a very admirable soldier, perhaps. We had to get everyone back. I wouldn't agree with that, but if that were the tone, you'd say, okay, look, that's a judgment call, and I respect it. But now they're trying to rationalize this deal with what are manifestly dishonest arguments. They'd be better off just taking the deal and saying, okay, it was a tough deal. Sometimes you got to do what you don't like to do, but they can't resist sort of trying to put a nice gloss on it, and in doing so, I think they're making their case weaker.
I couldn't agree more. Finally, Chuck Hagel is now, I won't say getting the blame, but the whispers are starting and getting louder that it was Chuck Hagel who signed off on this. He determined that the 5 weren't a threat to American security. He determined that they should be transferred out and traded for. And Hagel's going to appear before Congress tomorrow, so it's going to be interesting.
It is, and Hagel said the day after the deal was announced that, look, it was the president's call, and he supported the president's call, but he sort of made clear that it was the president's decision. And now apparently administration officials are kind of trying to shove Hagel out there, and perhaps he's the one who will take the fall on this, which is ridiculous. I mean, anyone who knows anything about this White House and this administration knows that Chuck Hagel makes no decision of any magnitude without not only sign-off from the White House, but basically without the White House telling him what to do. So
absolutely,
it is not a Chuck Hagel decision.
Bill, great to talk to you as always, sir. Thank you very much.
Hey, thanks, Steve.
Take care. All right, Bill Kristol, ladies and gentlemen, here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Yeah, interesting, very interesting. Well, I would have called Kerry's statement arrogant. That would have been me. I know if you call Obama arrogant, then you're a racist. So what am I if I call Kerry's statement arrogant? I don't know. What would I be? An arrogantist? I don't know. And of course, saying that Hillary will be worse off in the polls in 6 weeks after the book tour than she is now because of things she's saying, like she won't take back What Difference Does It Make? And Bill and I were broke when we left the White House. Now, they might have had great debts, yes, but you're not going to identify with the average person. She actually went on to say, you know, we had mortgages to worry about, Chelsea's college education. Are you kidding me? Really? I mean, they didn't know. They had that one book deal advance. They didn't know they were going to go on the lecture tour and make $250 a speech? Come on. That's not the average American. Anyway, we're coming back with the panel right here next on the Steve Malzberg Show. Don't you go away.